The Soviet Union produced hot rod submarines that could swim faster, take more damage, and dive deeper than their American counterparts, but the US Navy remained fairly confident it had the Soviet submarines outmatched because they were all extremely noisy. Should the superpowers clash, the quieter American subs had better odds of detecting their Soviet counterparts first, and greeting them with a homing torpedo. However, that confidence was dented in the mid-1980s, when the Soviet Navy launched its Akula-class nuclear-powered attack submarines. 30 years later they remain the mainstay of the Russian nuclear attack submarine fleet, and are quieter than the majority of their American counterparts. Intelligence provided by the spies John Walker and Jerry Whitworth in the 1970s convinced the Soviet Navy that it needed to seriously pursue acoustic stealth in its next attack submarine. After the prolific Victor-class and expensive titanium-hulled Sierra-class, construction of the first Project 971 submarine, Akula-Shark, began in 1983. The new design benefited from advanced milling tools and computer controls imported from Japan and Sweden, respectively, allowing Soviet engineers to fashion quiet 7-bladed propellers. The large Akula, which displaced nearly 13,000 tons submerged, featured a steel double hull typical to Soviet submarines, allowing the vessel to take on more ballast water and survive more damage. The attack submarine's propulsion plant was rafted to dampen sound, and anechoic tiles coated its outer and inner surface. Even the limbo holes which allowed water to pass inside the Akula's outer hull had retractable covers to minimize acoustic returns. The 111-meter-long vessel was distinguished by its elegant, aquadynamic conning tower and the teardrop-shaped pod atop the tail fin which could deploy a towed passive sonar array. A crew of around 70 could operate the ship for 100 days at sea. Powered by a single 190-megawatt pressurized water nuclear reactor with a high-density core, the Akula could swim a fast 33 knots, 38 miles per hour, and operate 480 meters deep, 200 meters deeper than the contemporary Los Angeles-class submarine. More troubling for the US Navy, though, the Akula was nearly as stealthy as the Los Angeles-class. American submariners could no longer take their acoustic superiority for granted. On the other hand, the Akula's own sensors were believed to be inferior. The Akula-I submarines, designated Shchuka, Pike, in Russian service, were foremost intended to hunt US Navy submarines, particularly ballistic missile submarines. 4 533mm torpedo tubes and 4 large 650mm tubes could deploy up to 40 wire-guided torpedoes, mines, or long-range SSN-15 Starfish and SSN-16 Stallion anti-ship missiles. The Akula could also carry up to 12 Granat cruise missiles capable of hitting targets on land up to 3,000 kilometers away. Soviet shipyards pumped out 7 Akula-Is while the US Navy pressed ahead to build the even stealthier Seawolf-class submarine to compete. However, even as the Soviet Union collapsed, it launched the first of 5 Project 971 new improved Akula-I boats. This was followed by the heavier and slightly longer 971A Akula-II class in the form of the Vepr in 1995. Which featured a double-layer silencing system for the powertrain, dampened propulsion systems and a new sonar. Both variants had 6 additional external tubes that could launch missiles or decoy torpedoes, and a new Strela 3 surface-to-air missile system. However, the most important improvement was to stealth. The new Akulas were now significantly quieter than even the improved Los Angeles-class submarines, although some analysts argue that the latter remain stealthier at higher speeds. You can check out an Office of Naval Intelligence comparison chart of submarine acoustic stealth here. The US Navy still operates 43 Los Angeles-class boats, though 14 newer Seawolf and Virginia-class submarines still beat out the Akula in discretion. However, Russian shipyards have struggled to complete new Akula-Is, which are not cheap. One figure claims a cost of $1.55 billion each in 1996. or $2.4 billion in today's dollars. The struggling Russian economy can barely afford to keep the already completed vessels operational. 2 Akula-Class were scrapped before finishing construction and 3 were converted into Akula-Class ballistic missile submarines. As for the Akula-2 Vepr, it was beset by tragedy in 1998 when a mentally unstable teenage seaman killed 8 fellow crew members while at dock, and threatened to blow up the torpedo room in a standoff before committing suicide. After lingering a decade in construction, the G-Pod, the only completed Akula-3 boat, was deployed in 2001, reportedly boasting what was then the pinnacle of Russian stealth technology. 7 years later, Moscow finally pushed through funding to complete the Akula-2 Nerpa after 15 years of bungled construction. However, during sea trials in November 2008, a fire alarm was triggered inadvertently, flooding the sub with Freon firefighting gas that suffocated 20 on board, mostly civilians, the most serious recent incident in a long and eventful history of submarine disasters. After an expensive round of repairs, the Nerpa was ready to go, and promptly transferred on a 10-year lease to India for $950 million. Redubbed the INS Chakra, it served as India's only nuclear-powered submarine for years, armed with the short-range Club cruise missile due to the restrictions of the Missile Technology Control Regime. In October 2016, Moscow and New Delhi agreed on the leasing of a second Akula-class submarine, although it's unclear whether it will be the older Akula-I Cachalot or never completed Akula-2 Iribes, though the steep $2 billion price tag leads some to believe it may be the latter. This year, the Chakra will also be joined by the domestically produced Typhoon-class, which is based on the Akula but reoriented to serve as a ballistic missile sub. Today the Russian Navy maintains 10 to 11 Akulas, according to Jane's accounting in 2016, 6, but only 3 or 4 are in operational condition, while the rest await repairs. Nonetheless, the Russian Navy has kept its boats busy. In 2009, 2 Akulas were detected off the east coast of the United States. Supposedly the closest Russia submarines had been seen since the end of the Cold War. 3 years later, there was an unconfirmed claim, this time denied by the US Navy, that another Akula had spent a month prowling in the Gulf of Mexico without being caught. The older Cachalot even has been honored for tailing a foreign submarine for 14 days. All of these incidents have highlighted concerns that the US Navy needs to refocus on anti-submarine warfare. In the last several years, Russia has also been upgrading the Akula fleet to fire deadly caliber cruise missiles, which were launched at targets in Syria in 2015 by the Akula-class submarine Rostov-on-Don. Despite the Akula's poor readiness rate, they continue to make up the larger part of Russia's nuclear attack submarine force, and will remain in service into the next decade until production of the succeeding Yeltsin-class truly kicks into gear. Until then, the Akula's strong acoustic stealth characteristics will continue to make it a formidable challenge for anti-submarine warfare specialists.